Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder videos, and a tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to the Thursday edition of Bye, a weekly behind-the-scenes DM-only live stream, crafting mysteries. Little record scratch. So this is still my DM-only live stream where I build, write, and prepare for our next session of our campaign. But in this case, the next session, well, it's not in our campaign. It's a Halloween one-shot, and I'll be running a module from Candlekeep Mysteries, which I have not revealed which one that is. It's all very last minute, by the way, which is also why I'm running a pre-done module, though I like doing that anyway for my games. If you are playing characters, don't quite know the characters yet. Actually, I kind of do know the characters. Probably just bring over our one-shot characters from our last Halloween one-shot, but obviously those will not be welcome here. But for the rest of you, you are welcome. There will be some major spoilers. We stream our D&D sessions live on YouTube every Friday. You can join our official Discord server with invite link in the description below. If you would like to support the channel, please check out patreon.com/RogueWatson for our campaign. We use Roll20.net for streaming. I use OBS Studio. I literally just last minute slapped all this together and decided, you know what, we're just going to go ahead and do a crafting stream for... I think this is the first time I've done this too. I think I've meant to do this before whenever I was running like, you know, one-shots or just other things. I always thought, well, I could do crafting for those as well, but it just never quite, I don't know, synced up time-wise to do that. And this time I specifically thought, well, I have just very little time to get this done. I've been out sick for the last, since basically Saturday, with a horrible stomach flu, and I'm finally on the mend from that. I'm still not 100%, but I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. And yes, I was just sick like 2 weeks ago, so I'm speed running through illnesses pretty much as soon as fall started, which is a huge pain in the butt. And this was a horrible week for that to have happened because I've got a patron game tonight, and then I've got our big Halloween one-shot tomorrow, so yikes. But I will say, the Halloween one-shot, as you will see in a second, there's complexity to it, but also it's going to be a little bit different from the kind of stuff we usually run. The usual stuff that we run when it comes to Halloween one-shots is, which I think a lot of D&D Halloween-themed horror stuff is, which is basically like a haunted house dungeon crawl, right? There's like monsters, there's creepy stuff going on. You have to investigate some location for some reason, and then, you know, bad things happen there that you have to survive. Ultimately, it's basically a dungeon crawl, but just with a creepy theme to it. I think that's literally what most of our Halloween one-shots have been, and they're fun. I think that it's a lot of, you know, those are very fun and enjoyable stuff to do. This one is not going to be like that. It's going to be very, very different as I reveal what we're going to be playing, which, as I mentioned, obviously Candlekeep Mysteries. The specific module is going to be Shemshime's Bedtime Rhyme, which I have a new map for because, of course, the original Candlekeep Mysteries maps absolutely suck. They are horrendous and horrible. I would not recommend them to anybody. And I thankfully there's other maps available you can find freely or paid. This one is by the Mad Cartographer, but this map itself is actually freely available on a just via Reddit post, just kind of as a free sample. So I thought, well, this is just pleasant as hell. And that's what I needed. I needed just a nice thing I could throw on there. Just give me a full color map I can work with. And it also isn't as zoomed out as the other one, which is nice. In fact, the resolution on this was insane. I had to like make this almost 2 or 3 times as small. Which, by the way, the music track you heard, I'm going to be using Come Play With Me by Incompetech/Kevin MacLeod, which I think fits the kind of bedtime rhyme you're supposed to be using here, which is the entire theme of this episode, this module, which, as I mentioned in my review of Candlekeep Mysteries and my ranking of them, Shemshine was not necessarily one of my favorite ones. In fact, I think it ended up being somewhere in the middle of the pack. But I think it's going to be the easiest to run for what I'm looking for, and it's still the most horror-themed of all of them. It's a straight-up horror movie where the players essentially get trapped in this area under quarantine. It's kind of a purpose trapping, I guess, in a specifically in Candlekeep Mystery. It's one of the few adventures that actually takes place in Candlekeep, and they are cursed by having to sing this kind of creepy children's rhyme, and it's a singing madness that begins to spread, and then it ramps up, as a lot of good horror stories do, where it starts out like kind of mysterious and then it kind of ramps up into more creepy things happening until finally you have to fight a big bad. Not a lot, there's not a real dungeon crawl here. Basically, you have full exploration of this entire area, which is this unique kind of two-tiered oops, sorry, it's knocking my guys over. Library that's got this kind of cool book lift in the middle, and then the whole thing takes place underground. By the way, it takes place under the House of Rest, and that's where the players are staying. They've got this. There's a couple bedrooms that are where they can, hang out at, and I guess they're supposed to arrive and spend the night. I need to figure all this out and figure out how much exactly I want to montage them in the beginning, because one issue we always have when we're running one-shots in my in our schedule in our games is the one-shots are typically, pretty long. It takes a while to do a full beginning, middle, and end in a single game, and they usually run 3+ hours, and that's become increasingly difficult for us to maintain with my particular group. So trying to pare down any, even a module that is described as a one-shot, labeled as such, I have to take and be like, all right, I'm going to have to take this and pare it down. Thankfully, this one does not have very much combat, and combat is the one thing that's going to add the most time to any module. In fact, I think there's only one semi-scripted battle in here, and that's actually part of the random encounters, and then the main combat is going to be through the end, with the actual encounter with the kind of demon, fey creature who's cursing them. But even then, you can kind of treat it almost like an adventure game where you can't defeat them through normal means. So if you try to fight this thing straight up, like a lot of horror villains, it's not going to work. You have to come up with some different means, and in fact, there's a specific solution you have to find throughout the investigation. So it's a really different style for us, and it's going to be tricky for me, but also hopefully not as tricky as running a full-on like dungeon crawl and worrying about all the pacing and combat and I guess all the usual stuff you have to do. This one should be a lot more just responding to the players and dealing with things that happen via events. So if you're not familiar with this one, I think I've already kind of gone over the overview where the players are staying in this location beneath the House of Rest. I think it starts with them arriving. Let's see, starting the adventure. That's the actual book, which the book actually does come into play. A lot of the Candlekeep Mysteries books, I don't want to digress too much, but a lot of the books like barely actually come into play when it comes to the adventure. It's like, oh, you read about this adventure in a book, and now you go on the adventure, and then nobody gives a shit about the book anymore. And then some of the adventures actually do take place in Candlekeep, which is like, all right, that makes sense, or Candlekeep Mysteries. And then this one not only takes place in Candlekeep Mysteries, but also heavily involves the book. So it checks both those boxes, I guess. Yeah, it takes place in Firefly Cellar beneath the House of Rest, which there's an awesome, huge, ridiculously huge resolution map of Candlekeep, which I can show the players, and I'll probably include that as their opening little montage. It's like, hey, you arrived in Candlekeep. The House of Rest is actually just outside of the main area of Candlekeep, still inside the walled area, but not in the like inner area, I guess. So you're kind of standing out there, or staying in a place out there. Maybe you're that's as far as you're going to go, or maybe you're planning on trying to get inside, or whatever's going on. I guess you've already gotten inside this far. But I don't know whether to have to montage them through the first day and meeting people, or to let them actually play that out and then have them go to sleep. It's kind of weird to like force the players like, all right, well, it's nighttime, it's time to go to sleep. Nothing bad's happened here. Versus just montaging through the events of, hey, you've arrived, you met this person, you're staying here, you've got a nice room. And then having them wake up the next day and have the curse having been in effect, and then and maybe wake up with like security alarms going off with the lockdown in place, and that will actually kick off the adventure. In other words, let's maybe start it a little bit more kind of in the inciting incident, basically. So the characters, which are important in this one also, there's a lot of NPCs that I have to keep track of and run. Again, it's a very social RP exploration heavy module. The elderly elf Varnir, which is another section for Cellar, and thankfully this one's pretty well organized. Stellar Inhabitants, who is like 600 some, yeah, age 685. She's a very elderly elf. She's one of the Avowed, a senior scribe who has spent centuries at Candlekeep. She loves the books. She has little ambition, perfectly content as senior scribe. She's hardworking, just kind of a nice old elf lady. As was adjutant when Shimsheim's curse first came to Candlekeep, though she's unaware the book was the cause of the madness. So she actually does have experience with this, and I think she's the one that starts the lockdown. But I may have the lockdown be like nobody's in charge. Maybe it's like the place itself is locking things down. So she's there and she's restoring this place. I don't know if she normally works here. Or if she is just restoring it, but I know her restoration project is part of what's going on. Scribe Varnir. As you see, the restoration project is a work in progress. So she's the one that they meet first, and then they find Ebdur downstairs. She's like, go take these books downstairs. And then Ebdur is here at the downstairs area. Both the first and second floor are both very similar with these cool, like, circular bookshelf things, kind of a concentric ring happening with the shelves. Which I took the liberty, this is not the case in the original map drawn. It only has the dynamic lighting done on the outer walls and leaves the shelves. However, as I was reading, the shelves are 10 feet high. So I was thinking those should be sight blockers. And also that would add to the horror quite a bit if those were sight blockers. So if we take, let's see, I think Crinkle's my example because I gave him vision. So then it becomes, you know, looking like this. Now this is with no lighting whatsoever. And if I gave him some more lighting, if he had dark vision, which some of them will, I'm sure. Let's see, night vision of 60. I default give everybody 5. Then it looks more like that. So I think that's a little bit more horror. And you could still tell that they're bookshelves. I made sure to draw the dynamic lighting kind of generously. But, yeah, I think that's a little more effective, having it be with the actual lighting everywhere. I do need to actually light this place up because a big part of it is the whole... it's lit by little fireflies. It's called the Firefly Cellar, not just for a cute name, but like that's the whole... It's literally just lit by all these cute little fireflies everywhere that I think produce dim lighting. So I need to actually do the lighting on it. Although anybody who's got dark vision, I don't think is going to care. Let's see, where was I? Starting the adventure. And then Ebdur. Okay, Ebdur sitting at the table. Put my daughter to bed. They just meet all the people at first. So I'm thinking I don't know if I want to let the players do all that. And like meet everybody as they kind of walk around and explore and then stay the first time. Maybe that'd be useful. Or just have the montage through meeting these people. And then... basically letting them really first take over the reins after they go to bed and then wake up with the curse. Okay, there's a lockdown in singing. Sounds like a job for celebs doing Imagine. Except in this case, the lockdown is because of the singing. It's a singing curse, which I guess drives you to madness and like empowers this evil... demon of Shimsheim. It's kind of innocuous at first because everybody's just kind of singing, but I'm going to make the singing quite creepy. Hence that track from Incompetech. So Ebdur, lawful good human scribe, age 33, is a pessimist who sees every setback as a disaster and every victory as dumb luck. He's a widower, and his daughter Galby provides him respite from his anxious outlook. So I like that. He's just kind of a big cranker pants. So I've used this token here, which is from... Actually, I found a lot of them from Tomb of Annihilation. Crinkle does come with a token already. The others did not have token art. And since these are going to be frequent, NPCs the party interacts with, I definitely need token art for them. So I believe I found the one for the Tabaxi, Ebdur, and his daughter from Tomb of Annihilation. And then I found the Elder Elf just from, I think, the Player's Handbook or something. Trying to find an old elf is actually not a very common thing. I don't know if elves get a lot of wrinkles or anything. How do you tell? I guess you have to cut them in half and cut the rings. Follow up my Discord question from yesterday. My next campaign to run should be the one you create. Do you have any plans on creating your own module? Uh, hmm. I will say I'm still working on creating adventures. There is one that I'm nearing completion, which is just an adaptation of a dungeon I wrote for our Empire of the Ghouls campaign early on in chapter 2, I believe it was. And then there's another one that I've been working on for months and months and months that I bit off more than I can chew, but I am planning on finishing that at some point if I could stop having life kick me in the butt every time. But bigger than that, I don't know, man. I've had my hands full just trying to run these other adventures. Honestly, trying to run my live campaign and then the patron games, doing reviews and all that. It's a lot on my plate as it is. So don't hold your breath for that stuff, is what I will say. But I do plan on putting out some smaller bite-sized adventures, maybe working my way out to that. Honestly, a lot of what I like to do though is stuff like this, which is take pre-written stuff that I have looked at and said, okay, there's no major issues here, and then, tweaking and fixing things to make it more palatable for me and my group. That's what I like to do with my content. Doing completely original stuff, there's some appeal there for sure, but the time it takes is it's intimidating. When I hear singing in streams, I'm liable to want to put myself in lockdown. I'm probably the biggest one to break into song when it comes to those kind of things. In fact, you have seen that happen when I sang a parody in our epilogue episode of Rime of the Frost Maiden. I wrote an entire parody song to a Disney classic that covered the events of our campaign. End of a 1 to 15th level campaign. Man, yeah. I mean, I was ready for Rime to end, truth be told, and that one lasted 2 years. And honestly, Rime, I injected a lot of stuff into Rime, right? Like, obviously I took the base campaign, but there was a lot of things I ended up adding in there, and to where the main story was, quite a bit different than what the base one is, which is not much of one. Yeah, and there's nothing else that really happens here. So they basically just meet all the NPCs when they arrive. They meet Varnir, they meet Ebdir. The books are for Cthulhu, who is the Tabaxi. She's a druid, I believe, her stat block. So Ebdir's a commoner, Varnir's a noble in terms of stat blocks. And the only reason this matters is because the combat that could happen is because the madness can affect everybody, including the players and the NPCs. Thank you, CT. I appreciate you. Cthulhu's a gregarious tabaxi. She arrived at Candlekeep 6 days ago and received permission to use the library to conduct research on regional forms of folk magic. She's an animated talker who has exaggerated gesticulations while chatting annoy Varnir with the elf research academic expertise. So I consider, Varnir being very old and kind. I don't know, maybe like a Helen Mirren or something. Ebdir is very grouchy and just pessimistic, basically. Like everything is going wrong and, just seems like kind of an annoyed dude every time. Cthulhu, probably the opposite. Probably very excited about things, probably thrilled about being. And Ebdir's an employee, by the way. He's an avowed, so he does work here straight up. Cthulhu is not. Cthulhu's a visitor like the players. And she's really excited to be here. She's excited to talk about stuff. She's just thrilled about researching different forms of, what did you say, folk magic or something? Like, yeah, so she's come far and wide, obviously, from wherever the hell the Tabaxi come from. And then, so I'm already getting a feel for all these NPCs. Did they actually meet Crinkle yet? Yeah, and then Crinkle's also, I believe, an employee. Behind her is Crinkle with a tray of food for them. With that, Varnir bids them goodnight, leaves the characters alone. So Crinkle, aged Kenku, has lived in the Firefly cellar for the past 22 years. Custodian and caretaker of the Fireflies. Okay. She has lost many... Oh, I forgot it was a woman, Kenku. She's lost many of her feathers, and those that remain are frayed and disheveled. She carries a long staff with a hook on the end, which uses to change the Firefly lamps that hang from the ceiling. Crinkle has little patience for others, regards Senior Scribe Varner's restoration efforts as an invasion. Gilby Smallstone has softened the Kenku's dour disposition with appreciation of interesting objects. Okay, so probably pretty possessive and really is the quiet, yeah, caretaker who cares very much about the fireflies. So there you go. That's the important thing, is to keep track of who the NPCs are. And notice I actually put the nameplates on them, which I don't usually do for my tokens, but I think that's going to help me as well. Again, this is going to be out of my comfort zone, which is playing a very social roleplay heavy session where we may not even have a lot of skill checks and combat rolls for a good chunk. So the awkward thing is, I don't know whether to let the players actually roam around and explore and talk to people, but it feels like that would be better just as a montage system, right? To have them show up, you talk to Varnir, who welcomes you in, describe her a little bit. She gestures you to go downstairs to, check out your room, and there you find basically everybody else, I guess. Is Ebder sitting at the table downstairs? Okay, so Ebder's working. I guess they don't meet Galeby, technically, because she's asleep when they arrive, which I do like that it's nighttime, so they don't have a lot of time, which is why we're montaging through the evening. And then when they go to their room, okay, and they deliver books to Cthulhu's room. They meet Cthulhu, and then Crinkle shows up with the food. So yeah, they'll end up meeting everybody. I'll probably do that as a montage sequence, pretty quick in the introduction, and then once the actual night happens, I guess that's under... that's event 1 is quarantine. Okay. All right, so this is an important table. We're going to table that for now. So we've got the adventure starting, cellar inhabitants. I guess I should go over the adventure overview, just so we're all clear on this. Window in this basement means the House of Rest. Okay. After spending the night there, all the characters wake in the morning with the same tune in their heads. Each one hums it under their breath. They soon discover the tune has spread to the Firefly Cellar's other occupants, and the Avowed institute a quarantine to contain what is actually a curse. The adventure is built around a sequence of events that unfold when the characters are quarantined in Candlekeep's Firefly Cellar, with a handful of the library's attendants, which are the ones we just went over, in an attempt to keep Shemshime's rhyme from spreading throughout the entire library. The events describe Shemshime's growing supernatural influence and how people deal with the mounting pressure of confinement under dangerous circumstances. The characters must identify the curse's source. Their search eventually leads them to Crinkle, the Firefly Cellar's Kenku caretaker, who has the book Shemshime's Bedtime Rhyme, which is this book here, which I have pictures of both it closed and open, which is pretty nice. Although I wonder if somebody did this online. They're supposed to be, you're not supposed to see the 4th image yet. That's actually part of the puzzle of the adventure, is you don't know how to defeat Shemshime. You just see all the nasty things he does. And then we trigger a bunch of events. And the interesting thing is, it's up to me how often I want to trigger the events. I've obviously done some watched some videos and done some research and seen how other people have handled this. Some of them, they drag it out to last, like an event a day or something. I think these things need to happen over the course of probably a single day. Makes the most sense to me, where the curse really starts ramping up. Obviously, different horror movies are paced differently, but I think for the sake of doing a one-shot session, and it also just feels weird. Players aren't just going to go to sleep with like bad things happening also, right? Like, it just feels narratively like once the bad thing starts happening, players are going to start investigate, and I don't know. The fact that everybody's like singing the song, maybe that would probably prevent you from sleeping. So to me, these all happen in the same day, and probably in decent speed to where I could even have some happen on top of the other. I would love to have the players being, split up or something. That would be obviously the DM's dream for horror movies. I know we did that right at the beginning of Chris's Halloween one-shot last year, which was fantastic. Characters wake up. So event 1 is the quarantine. They all hum Shemshime's rhyme perfectly. Not entirely certain they knew it before today. The curse tune spread to them when Galeby's Smallstone sang it in the hall outside the character's room after she heard it from Crinkle. So, canonically, Crinkle is the first to be infected by it. I'm not sure if it ever says... I don't think it's malicious either. It's just that he happened to be the victim. And then it spread to her, and then it spread to everybody else. Cthulhu and Ebder share the table with the characters. Ebder is reading from the same book he had last night. The humming clearly bothers him, and after a short time, he asks the characters to keep quiet. The characters try to stop humming. They notice they can't do so without conscious effort. See resisting the rhyme. I don't see resisting the rhyme. But, okay, it's under finding the book. Okay. which I believe they have to make a saving throw to actually try to resist. After a few minutes, Ebder begins humming the melody as well, though he's unaware of it first. Moments later, the hatch in the ceiling of the upper floor slams shut. Okay, so it is kind of an... No, I don't like it. So Varnir has locked the hatch, sealing herself, the characters inside the Firefly cellar. Okay. I don't think I like that, because that means the players can... If she has the ability to lock and seal the hatch, then presumably she would have the ability to open it. Yeah, and I find that weird. And people would be like, well, maybe she's bad. I don't know. I feel like the whole place should be under its own lockdown. So I think I'm gonna let the mechanical locks engage. They're gonna sense, like, there's the Candlekeep is obviously very, I don't know, it's the equivalent of like just a modern design build, like a smart home. It's a magical smart home, where it's gonna respond to the fact that this curse is spreading, and it feels, I don't know, whatever bullshit reason, but the place shuts down. But at least Varnir will have some kind of response to that. She'll be like, "Uh-oh, this is, this is triggered. Like, there's some kind of flashing going on, or warning." In fact, I can even have an automated a magic mouth appear. Would be the equivalent of like a PA system that's like the, curse detected. I don't even know if I want to be that. I want to get that detailed about it. Danger. What's a phrase I can use? It's danger time. I don't know. Quarantine engaged. I can just be pretty vague about it. When I first arrived at Candlekeep the Avowed, we're concerned about a singing madness. Okay, so so once the characters are humming it, at that point, Crinkle is infected, Galeby is infected. The characters are supposedly all infected, but some of them could technically resist. Resisting the rhyme. The characters can will themselves not to sing the rhyme, but doing this requires concentration as though casting a spell. What does that mean? Characters can will themselves not to sing the rhyme, but doing this requires concentration as though casting a spell. So there's no check involved then. So in other words, as long as you're not concentrating on a spell, you can just resist the rhyme? Well, that's not as hard as I thought. I feel like there should be a save or something. Couldn't everybody just will themselves not to sing the rhyme all the time? Most people aren't spellcasters. That's disappointing. Silent spell negates the rhyme in the affected area. That's pretty big. Remove curse ends the curse on a creature that remains susceptible to being cursed again. If cast on the book, the magic suppresses the curse on all creatures for 10 minutes. They affect Ebder, and then once they affect Ebder, Varnir then, who I guess is in the same area, would then realize what's going on. Singing Madness, a book merchant afflicted with it and was put on isolation. After several avowed began singing this song as well. I don't know what happened to him or the others. That was 600 years ago. Alerted the avowed and sealed the exit to stop whatever this is from spreading. Okay, so I think I'm going to not have her be the one to seal things, but she will be the one to help explain a little bit about what's going on. And like to say that we're under quarantine because of, it means there's a magical infection here, and then she can even talk about hundreds of years ago. I recall there being a singing madness. Book merchant when afflicted with it and put in isolation. I don't know what happened to him or the others he infected. That was hundreds of years ago. So I think I'll change that, what she says, but I think the big change I'm making is she's not going to be the one to seal it. It's going to be an automatic seal. That way people don't complain and make her open it back up. Cthulhu's vocal about her discomfort being confined down here. I do like the fact that she'd be very upset about that. Maybe she's even a little bit claustrophobic, which is weird that she'd be staying down here. Ebder regards the quarantine as a minor annoyance and complains that all the commotion interferes with his work. Crinkle and Galeby are not present. Varner refuses to speculate about the madness, and she's not a spellcaster and doesn't want to guess at the cause without evidence, but perhaps you can find an answer in all this, she says, waving at the disheveled room. Characters can explore the Firefly Cellar and talk with the residents. As they do, emphasize the concentration needed to resist humming the melody. Yeah, but it's not... That doesn't sound harsh enough, right? I mean, I get having to concentrate. As far as I'm aware, again, it would just mean... I guess your concentration could be broken then. Anytime you took damage, you would have to make a save or you would start singing. And obviously, if you tried concentrating on a spell, then you would be always singing. Which, that would make it so you wouldn't be able to cast verbal components then? So they're not really given a heads up about what to do at the beginning. This is kind of a tricky part of it. The hatchman target about an arcane lock spell. And this part I'm going to definitely say there's no way you can open it because that kind of breaks the module, obviously. So this is under some DM magic where you cannot get out of this place, which is helpful. And this place is obviously not up to fire code, that there's only one entrance into this entire underground facility. Firefly is infected, or sorry, Crinkle's infected. Dismissive and grows irritated if they pester her. Ebder says he's working in the scriptorium. Nothing out of the ordinary unless you count the Kenku. Galeby, interested in showing off her toys and fielding questions. If she asks about her drawing, she's scared that she's in trouble and becomes quiet. Ooh, she's got some creepy kid drawings, which is always a good part of horror movies with children. Cthulhu, the back can be found in her room. She's having trouble concentrating on work and is visibly anxious. I think, yeah, so she would go from like really happy and excited to be here to being like more visibly upset. And if there's anyone to go like mad by the end, she's the best one. And in fact, I think escape attempt is her escaping. Because as I mentioned, I believe she's a full druid stat block, which makes her the more powerful of all the NPCs. So she would just be the more interesting to have to deal with in combat. Varnier reminds the stacks from hour before trying to her room. She's already shared everything she knows about the curse affecting them. I've asked about what she's been doing lately. She explained that she has been dividing her time between fixing the balcony and working in the bindery repairing books. She's able to suppress the urge to hum the melody without any outward signs of duress. Okay, so nothing crazy is happening yet. So we kind of need to look at the room-to-room breakdown. I know you can start doing events, but at some point the player is going to want to start doing some research themselves, and that part gets important. So let's look at the room-to-room breakdown. So area F1, which is the top, has a cool balcony which looks over the middle table in F2. Half the area has been restored, so there's some rugs and potted plants, although Lord knows they're not getting any light down here. Some statues have been removed and replaced with chairs. It's pretty cute the way she's kind of restoring this place. There's a book lift. I do need to be careful about describing this room because the only way you can destroy Shemshime is with a very heavy object. So I need to be able to paint those. It's Chekhov's enormous stone sculpture of an open book that looks as though the cover's flapping to keep it aloft. That's hanging over, I believe, this middle section, and that's literally kind of the way you're supposed to. I think the module kind of wants you to use that to destroy Shemshime. But there's other things you can do, I think. Yeah, bookcases are 10 feet tall, so they're going to block line of sight. So book lift. Yeah, flying book sculpture. Which, yeah, you've got chains and stuff you can break. Basically, there's ways to destroy it. I would love for the big finale to be a combat encounter, but the players have this other thing that they have to do. And hopefully they've figured out that they have to do that. You don't want to win too quickly, like just turn into a puzzle where they instantly find the solution. You want them to struggle a little bit, but you don't want them to be clueless and just try to fight Shemshime like straight up, because that does not work. and I will televise that by saying your weapons pass right through it. It's just incorporeal and can't be harmed. So nothing really in F1 that's interactable, other than there's the stairs up and down, and then there's the lift and the flying book sculpture. F2 and the stacks, also just a bunch of books everywhere. 300-pound table in the middle, which is cool looking. Stairs going down further, stairs going up. There is a door. The scriptorium is F3. Writing desk, stacks of paper. Dedicated to the copying of library texts. The door in the wood-paneled wall is closed with a padlocked latch. Crinkle has the key but gives up a link grudgingly. Explain the firefly should not be disturbed. Okay, which is F4, I think. Okay, so this door needs to be locked. Anyone who searches behind the tapestry finds words scratched onto the stone wall. The lyrics of Shemsham's rhyme except for the final stanza. They were carved by Johan Pilt, who was sealed in the room because of this madness. Hey, Jory. Hello, Finland. Thank you very much. Appreciate you. You caught me in a very weird crafting stream. I'm actually not crafting our full campaign. I'm crafting our Halloween one-shot. So the only thing they can find here is the lyrics, which is still pretty important. If they randomly decide to move the tapestry aside. That'd be one of those things where I would not shout that out unless they were really doing a thorough search. Because I think eventually they do learn the lyrics through the events. They're going to be very suspicious, this one locked door. DC 15 dex check, or it can be destroyed. Be broken down, yeah. I feel like if I started doing that, then like Ebder or somebody would come in and shout at them, be like, what are you doing? And tell them to go ask Crinkle for the key. That's the Firefly room. Don't, you know, they'll be, you know, I mean, it's a tricky situation where like the players are not in a dungeon, right? They're just in a fucking like library slash place people can stay. B&B, I guess. And yet, you know, they're D&D adventurers, so they'll probably break doors down, especially once they're in quarantine and like people start going mad. The Firefly room, which is the locked room, does take a perception check to reveal scratch into the floorboards and Manic script the words "finish the rhyme." That's pretty creepy and cool. And then a secret compartment on the floor, which is the, I think, is that the singing skull? 2 humanoid bodies. Yeah, and this is the people who are basically affected with the curse last. Which is kind of creepy that they were buried in this room. But that's a really creepy, cool find. So I like that. But again, I have no control over when the players find all that necessarily. And it could be that I like move up some of the, you know, maybe when they start breaking down the door, that's when they hear a scream and I trigger, you know, Ebder's outburst, for example. So a lot of these events will be scripted to happen either time-wise when they get lost and not wanting to do anything, or if they maybe explore in some directions, we can trigger those events. So that's an important room because they'll find some information there that I believe is detailed in event number 3. The bindery, which is on the other side of F2, which is just kind of another place where they work on books. And this is an important one because they discover that certain books have been essentially checked out for repair. And one of them is not on the bench, which is Shemsham's bedtime rhyme. So that's the first clue the players have that this is the book, or there's a book that's causing a problem, or something is going on. They maybe need to investigate it. So they find a note basically that says these books need repairs, and they find 3 of the 4 books on the table. So I do like, that's very cool, investigative. I like that a lot. They can find that anytime. And then you go downstairs. There's a bunch of rooms down here, which is kind of the B&B portion. F6, just a tunnel, which you can definitely have one of the creepy events happen here. I can't quite, I don't think I can scroll down. Oh yeah, I can. There you go. Just far enough where you can actually see the tunnel. And again, this map is from the Mad Cartographer version of the Firefly Cellar, which is absolutely gorgeous. Mad Cartographer, I think, mainly does Foundry maps now, but I don't know if you can still use those for Roll20. I guess it depends on the format you get them in. Lanterns hang from hooks every 10 feet. I need to remind myself on how much light these fireflies actually provide. I don't know if it ever actually explains that. I feel like that's something we would Google search while playing, is how much light does a firefly provide? Like, but mechanically in D&D, like how much should I have all these little lights give off? Just like, you know, you still gonna have that creepy atmosphere, so maybe each one, I mean, they're everywhere. So each one does like 10 feet of light, dim light or something. I feel like it'd all be pretty dim light. That'd be annoying to read books in dim light constantly. I don't know if the characters will have a lot of dark vision situations or not. If they have dark vision, I don't think the dim light's going to matter too much. There's a kitchen. Just has a oven enchanted by heat metal, which is funny. And then a bunch of everybody's quarters, which I don't think most of them are pretty notable. An unoccupied room of the Avowed is an F. I guess all the players are supposed to stay in one room. Probably F12. F9 is Galeby's room. She's been drawing creepy pictures that depict scenes from Shemshime's bedtime rhyme. Done in loud colored paint in a style typical of a child, make them all the more settling. Ooh, I wonder if I can like Google search if somebody's made any of these images or something. Because I have zero talent even for making crappy like stick figure drawings. To where I would ruin the mood. It would everybody be laughing. That's not necessarily what I want to do. I want to make the creepy like. I think it's a scene from what does it? Babadook might do it. Sixth Sense is probably the most famous like kid being creepy thing. I think there's scenes of them looking through pictures that he draws of the dead people. But I think that's a classic horror trope. One of the images shows a man, which is all the images from here. You could technically, I guess, recreate. You could cut a portion of these out, but images show a man whose feet has been severed. Blood pours from his ankles and from the severed feet next to him. Another shows a boy underwater, gasping at his throat, and the last one shows a dog with a severed hand in its mouth. A black cloud hovers over each scene. Ebder's room. Nothing going on in there. Crinkle's room is the key to this locked room. Okay. So is that the only one that's locked, which is F11? Again, the single locked room is going to be kind of suspicious, though. I feel like everybody would have their rooms locked. Do they get keys? The room is crawling with wingless larval fireflies. Gross. An engraving of a goat wearing a crown leans against the north wall. That's really fucking creepy. Crinkle, everybody's gonna paint you as the fucking creepy one. And it's a shame that he is like or she is the instigator of everything. Let's see. Perception check reveals sporadic glowing. When he puts a finger in the hole, there's a toggle switch. There's a small storage space. Part of Event 5, Shenshime's bedtime rhyme is found here. Otherwise, the spaces contain the following treasures. I guess they could actually search around and find some treasure. Stolen the ring that belonged to Ebder's wife. An ornate curved dagger, a set of 4 intricately shaped glass bottles, nothing in them. Okay, so she is not... Is she supposed to have been affected by Shemshime, or is she kind of, like, why would she steal his ring? That's a little sus. Maybe you're not as much as a victim as I thought. F12 believes where the character's staying, yeah. And then F13, Cthulhu's room. And F14 is Varnir's room. So basically that's where everybody stays. So I may actually just lock everybody's rooms. That way Crinkles will be less suspicious. Let's lock. So their room should be open. Tula's will be locked. And then we'll leave F8 open. That's just an open bedroom. All right. So the main things they can find and explore on their own would be in F5. And then technically they could find things a little bit early in F3 and F4 in the scriptorium in the Firefly room. But I think if they explore at least into the Firefly cell, like to try to get in there or something, then that's when I would trigger event 2, which is Ebder's outburst. A sound tears to the Firefly cell, repairing all the noise that rapidly increases in uncanny pitch. You recognize Ebder's voice. So basically, you go back to Ebder and realize his eyes are bulging in terror. As he hums the rhyme's melody, the rest of his body is paralyzed. He's cold to the touch. He continues to sing the rhyme over and over. During this time, Gelby runs in the room to help her father. Krinkle follows her and tries to console the child with little effect. Shimsham's influence has begun to reach into the world, and Ebder stops singing. Roll in the Shimsham's influence table to find out what happens next. So at this point, we start having manifestations. In fact, it actually says, after Edber's outburst, Shimsham's influence manifests in the Firefly Cellar in several unsettling ways. From this point forward, whenever at least half the characters are singing Shimsham's rhyme, roll in the Shimsham's influence table to remember what happens. I still don't like the thought of just letting them use concentration to not sing. I feel like that should be some kind of saving throw or something. Maybe just use like a charisma save, because I think that's what Shimsham uses a lot of. That way it can be, or I just, I don't know, trigger it on my own whenever the events happen. The events is a D6 table, of which can be pretty damaging or could even be combat. For the next 10 minutes, all fireflies and lamps flicker out at regular intervals, leaving the library in darkness for several seconds. I think that's when you really build the mood, especially when you go down like the tunnel and you can see the lights do the classic like doom, 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 right? Like the lights turn off. Fucking, was it Moon Knight did that really well for a non-horror section, but any horror movie that has a hallway usually has lights turn off in sections. It's always good. Random books fly off the shelves. Each creature in any of the book areas must succeed a DC 13 dex save or take 1d4 bludgeoning damage. I would probably increase that to make it more interesting. The library becomes much colder. This drops in temperature lasts to the end of the adventure, although this doesn't have any kind of saves or anything associated with it. So that might actually be a chance for everybody to roll for exhaustion, because exhaustion would affect all of their ability checks. So maybe you could even do like a con save. Probably a lower one though, like a DC 10, just to see if people become uncomfortable. Shadows appear in the same area as the characters. The shadows attack the characters, but disappear at the end of their third turn in combat if they've not been destroyed by then. Shadows are obviously very, very dangerous creatures, even though they don't have a lot of AC or hit points, but their attack deals a lot of damage, and of course they have the strength drain, where they drain somebody's strength score by 1d4, and if that reduces their strength to 0, it kills somebody. Yikes. Might force them to try and short rest to repair, but if they short rest, of course, that would definitely trigger more events happening. So careful with that one. Obviously, good to break it up because there's basically no other combat besides the final combat. Well, I say that I guess there's the madness of other people being infected. But in terms of just fighting good old-fashioned monsters, this is kind of your one opportunity to do that. So I will probably trigger the shadow one at some point. I feel like 3 shadows isn't enough. I feel like you would want to do 1 per person. I mean, they're level 4, by the way. I should have started with that. This is level 4 module, so it's not like, the whole time you might be thinking it's like level 1 because there's no, like combat or danger or anything here. But level 4, I think you can at least handle 4 shadows, even temporary ones that fuck with you. Make an intelligence save to control their ability, and if they fail their action is a chant or sing with a spacey look in their eyes. I feel like concentration would technically be a con save, wouldn't it? Because if it's specifically saying you have to use your concentration, then concentration is all specifically based on con. So I guess weirdly, it's like a physical thing and not a mental thing is what the game's on kind of telling me, the game mechanics. And then it should be a constitution save to see if you can actually suppress from singing the rhyme. And I could just tell everybody to do that every once in a while. And it doesn't really have any long-term effects on the characters. But what it does is if enough of them are singing, then that's going to manifest these different events. Now, what I don't know is whether or not I want to actually roll for these or if I want to just trigger whichever ones I feel like triggering. Probably going to be whichever ones I feel like triggering versus what's interesting and, you know, how hard we are going on, you know, the players, if they've taken any damage recently, you know, that kind of thing. Shemsham's spell magic manifests as random character's worst nightmare. Character's going to make a DC 12 intelligence saving throw. There's your intelligence save, lazy DM. On a failed save, the character takes 2d8 psychic damage and is frightened of the manifestation, believing it to be real. This is basically the... Oh, shoot, what's the spell? I completely blank, but there's a spell that does this. Where you basically project a nightmare on somebody. I used it in... towards the end of Rhyme with Frostbane. I still can't think of it. It's not fear. It's I think it's an illusion spell. The manifested nightmare lasts for up to 1 minute, follows the character around, and can't be harmed. The character must repeat the save at the end of each of its turns, ending the illusion on a success or taking psychic damage on a failed save, which is a weird thing to have at the end of each of its turns if you're not in the middle of combat, right? So you basically have them make the save, they take the damage, it continues to follow them around, and you basically just tell them you have to repeat the save again. Also, you just pick one random character that has the nightmare follow them. That's brutal. Because 2d8 can add up pretty quick. If they never make the save, they could be down by that. And I mean, it's for a minute. So that would happen like 10 times, basically, until you make the saving throw. And then, the ultimate one, choose 3 creatures. Each one must succeed on a DC 14 wisdom save. Very interesting that all these saves are different numbers also. Or take 1d8 plus 3 psychic damage and makes a melee attack against one creature of your choice as a reaction. I always say, why does it have to be a melee attack? 'Cause if you've got spellcasters, I would just say, what is your go-to basic hit attack? Like, you know, does your character barely ever hold, you know, a dagger or a staff, but you shoot firebolt all the time? Then I would say you're going to use firebolt against somebody. Right? Like, I guess it's a reaction and you have to have a certain feat to do that, but it feels like if you have a bunch of spellcasters, in other words, like, okay, I'll make a melee attack and I'll attack with my dagger or sling or something, like, it feels less effective than you got a bunch of fighters that are, you know, slicing each other with swords. But those are fun things I can do, and that's basically where the punishment comes in and where it creates that sense of like, oh shit, we have to solve this issue because bad things are starting to happen to us. So the first one that happens is probably going to be the fireflies flickering, or maybe the books flying off the shelves, just to start off with a little bit of damage. Which is after he basically freezes. And I think Ebder's kind of... Is he taken out, or is he... I guess he recovers from it. Begin to reach in the world. Ebder stops singing. Doesn't really say what happens after that. So I guess he just freezes for a second, and it's kind of freaky. All right, event number 3. So event 2 doesn't necessarily lead to anything new in terms of information. It just starts the nasty events from happening. So you do need to trigger event 2 fairly quickly after event 1. Give them a little bit of chance to explore. Basically, as soon as they explore and leave the initial room, which is where Ebder is, and go do something, then they'll hear the scream and come back and we'll trigger event 2 because we want the Shemshime rhyme or Shemshime influence table to start happening essentially once we get going. Event 3 is the one that happens in, I believe, F4. Yeah, the secret compartment. The skull starts singing the words to the rhyme. The tune continues to tug at each of your minds, willing to intone a sequence of notes. Because before now, I think they've just been singing there you're thinking like Poltergeist, Captain Mike. I like it. Before, I think they're just humming the tune. They're not actually singing words to it. But then after event 3, I believe you start hearing the actual words. So I do like the way the story kind of builds. And now you share the handout of Shemshime's rhyme with the players, which is, I think I discovered it's down here. Yep, there it is. Down here is its own handout. Final stanza is absent from the handout, which is true. So it cuts it off because of my overlay, but it does not have the final part of the rhyme in there, which is what they discover from something else. So this is the thing that describes the book a little bit. And it's interesting they can actually find... I think they'll probably find this before... I guess the great sequence of events would be if you found Galby's drawings. You find the book... And see, I can't control what they find. They find the book is missing first. They end up going to Galby's room for whatever reason. Maybe I'll have her door be open. And having finding the creepy drawings, and then here in event 3 they'll actually learn the lyrics, and then the lyrics match the drawings. The skull continues to sing until it's destroyed. Okay, so event 3 basically combines with the room F4 description. You have to kind of reference both of those. Yeah, Skull starts singing the words to the rhyme. When a character is compelled to hum Shemsham's rhyme, they sing the words to the tune instead. So now they learn the words when the skull sings. Which was here. Moving the stone. So that'll actually bring them to F4. If they haven't already gotten to that room, they'll hear the singing coming from in there, which should be really deliciously creepy. Moving the stone. Singing from the room. Loose stone on the floor lies beneath the lowest shelf on the east wall. Moving the stone exposes a pile of bones in a nook 5 feet across and 5 feet deep. That's a big fucking nook, by the way. Investigating the bones reveals 2 humanoid bodies. One of the skulls is a hole in the back of it. That was Johan Pilt. Killed by the Avowed who was desperate in the curse. The Avowed, also stricken with the curse, killed himself to stop it from spreading. And I guess it's one of those that's actually singing. The skull continues to sing unless it's destroyed, or Shemsham is trapped in Shemsham's bedtime rhyme. The skull's tiny. Okay, so you can just destroy the skull. And then you would obviously trigger a creepy event happening. In fact, that would be a great opportunity to probably trigger the shadows attacking the players at that moment. Maybe if they destroy the skull, you could even make fucking out, with that and have them be like, oh, you're, now you're having to attack the, or you, maybe because you destroyed the skull, now the shadows, these creatures are attacking you. Then, event 4, Cthulhu reaches the end of her patience being confined. She's trying to break the quarantine. She runs the hatch to the ceiling of area F1. She tries to evade anyone who stands in her path, but fights them if necessary. If she reaches the hatch, she attempts to force the door open. So basically just classic, like going crazy and, thinks she's partially maybe possessed. In fact, I can even use some of these. That'd be especially good to do during combat, actually. Everybody, and that'd be the perfect one. DC 14 Wisdom save. Everybody takes psychic damage and makes a melee weapon attack during this combat where you think she's kind of partially gone, maybe a little bit crazy from the curse, but also she's just legitimately like kind of snapped because of the quarantine and the claustrophobia. It does so you can actually use a charisma check to calm her down, or calm emotions. But I think that she's, again, probably the most fun stat block because she's actually got some spells she can use. Thunder Wave would obviously be a pretty nasty one for her to do. You can even combine that with the books flying around. I think Thunder Wave is probably the only one that's worth using here. Entangle, Longstrider, Speak with Animals, Animal Messenger, Barkskin. How are those on an NPC? Okay. None of these are useful. But Thunder Wave, yeah, that'd be a good one to use. Not that she'd last very long in multiple PCs or anything, but you could use that in a surprise round and have that happen. So probably less of a traditional combat and more of like a danger thing that's happening. But I like that for sure. That's gonna be. I mean, basically I'm using all of these scripted events. Like they're all good shit. But this is also gonna be partially building to the climax at this point. The tricky thing is the players at this point, they need to be making steps to knowing what they have to do next. So, and weirdly, the adventure doesn't really rely on them solving the problem. Instead of the adventure even gets to like the end of the events and has one of the NPCs. That's basically your, that's kind of your big danger climax moment, I guess. Sorry, I just lost connection, but it looks like it reconnected. All right. Definitely do that. Having some PvP, always good stuff around the table. But also, you've got all those NPCs too, and that could be fun. I'll have to, again, familiarize myself. Ebder is a commoner. He's not really a combatant. So it might not be a bad idea to just basically take him out once event 2 happens. Whereas Varnir is a noble. Technically, she's not much of a fighter either, but maybe, I don't know, she could be hitting people. Mainly it's just the players who want to go crazy with each other, because Crinkle's not there either. So, and Cthulhu will presumably already have been dealt with, so having her go PvP again would be kind of boring. So this would just kind of affect all the players mainly. Charm creature can repeat the same thing at the end of each of its turns. And then event 6, Shimshime finally manifests. Interact with the book in the last stanza of the rhymes, tells how to foil Shimshime and end the curse. And then Galeby just appears in the doorway, blood splat on her face and down the front of her clothes. She's shaking with wide eyes and holding a large square book that has blood on the corner of its middle spine. So the weird thing is, the way it's scripted is it assumes the players aren't going to figure it out, and basically allows the NPCs to figure it out for them, and then kind of triggers the end. So that sounds dissatisfying. I guess I appreciate that it's kind of like a backup plan, but I do hope that the players themselves would have a little more forthright, to where if they're really searching and out of ideas, and you can technically, you're allowed to find the book in Crinkle's quarters, so I should probably let them do that, because that doesn't stop. Like, all these events can still happen, and you would just move that stuff up, and in fact you get to repair the music box, which is a great time to then trigger, like event 5 when they're repairing it or something. So you don't have to not let them find the book. And in fact, I think it's preferable if they do find the book, and actually that way they feel like they're making steps to solve the problem while still bad things are happening around them. Anyone proficient with Jeweler's Tools or Tinker's Tools advantage, DC 15 intelligence check reveals the problem. Sometimes hitting a scooch isn't working properly. Fitting the music box requires 3 successful DC 15 dex checks, each requiring an action. So obviously, and in fact, there's even an event that happens. Characters try to fix the music box, hear Shimshime's maddening whispers in their heads, or make an ability check. Regardless of whether the check succeeds or not, must make a DC 13 dex save or take 4d6 psychic damage on a failed save. Yikes. Once fixed music box plays its tune to the end, as it does so, the words of the rhyme's final stanza form in the character's mind. So interestingly enough, players might think you have to destroy the book, which would make sense, but that would be really bad, because the goal is in fact to repair the book so you can figure out how to defeat it. The words of this rhyme swells the character's minds. The scene played out in the book also continues to its conclusion, showing the tiny representative Shimshime being crushed beneath a millstone. Which the main thing is not supposed to be like, oh, we need to find a millstone, but it's like, we need to find something heavy to squash it with. Yeah, destroying the book does nothing. Whoops. And then to defeat Shimshime, who finally manifests, you then have to basically lead him around on a merry goose chase while he's attacking you, and he is a nasty, nasty stat block. I think he only has the 1 attack. Where can I click on him? But his Maddening Touch is a +5 to hit, does an average of 17 damage. He doesn't have a lot of AC or hit points, but again, he just doesn't die. If he's reduced to 0 hit points, he just drops to 1 hit point instead. So, and I would actually describe it as like you're not doing any damage to him. Like, he just effectively doesn't have hit points. He can only be destroyed by a giant crushing thing. Or just everybody's died in the area, I guess. Kind of like, the Smile, was that the movie? Or Fallen, that great, is it Denzel Washington and John Goodman in that movie? The time I almost died. Shimshime deals 2 creatures can be within 60 feet of it. Each must make a DC 13 Wiz save or take 1d8 psychic damage, which is reaction to make a melee attack against one creature, which is basically one of his events. And then the other one is a massive 30-foot AoE stun and 21 average psychic damage. So yeah, he can be pretty nasty, and hopefully we can manifest him while still having the players realize what they need to do. So it's going to be a way different style. This is going to be hopefully a lot of fun. It's very social, investigation heavy, not a lot of combat opportunities, but doesn't mean there's danger and still like D&D stuff happening. And I think it's interesting the way there's a ramp up of creepy things happening. It's just a lot of it is, I can script some of it, but I can't really script like the order of which players figure things out or find things. So a lot of this is going to be me having to just, ad lib and respond. and use all the events, both these literal scripted events as well as the smaller Shemshime influence events, to create that nice pacing and ramp up of things happening. The main thing important is to note where the important investigation clues are, which rooms actually hold interesting things, and then the things the players have to do until they eventually can defeat Shemshime and possibly, hopefully, survive this module. Maybe not. We will find out, because Shemshime is pretty nasty. So yeah, I think that is going to do it for this very unique, one-time only crafting of the Halloween one-shot special of 2023. If you enjoy this kind of content, consider checking out the Patreon at patreon.com/Rogue Watson. Shoutouts to Platinum patrons Joe, Will, Thomas, Stan, Brandon, Zennersider, David, Eclectic, Roleplay Roll, Christopher, Brian, Corey, Coa 1337, Big Nut, John F, John L, Scott, Eric, Tyler, Nathan, Camp Crystal Lake Counselor, Andrew, Daryl, The Relderin, Captain Woody 79, Stephanie, Andy, Patrick, and Jason. Shout out to new patron Jason, by the way. And gold patrons RPG, Papercraft, Spreeboy, and Yuma, Dead Lizard, Lounge, Sam, Lumpy Spuds, Jerome, Nathan, Fast Like a Tortoise, Scott, Ruffus, Karen, William, Jerry, Thomas, and Prophet. Thank you all very much for your support. If you're a patron who has signed up for the game, I will see you tonight. All the rest of you, I will see you for tomorrow's Halloween one-shot.